Macmillan Audio presents Blind Spot by Brenda Novak. Read for you by Thérèse Plummer. For all of these things, I am not the least bit sorry. Carl Panzram, American serial killer, arsonist, rapist, and burglar. Chapter 1. Somewhere in Anchorage, Alaska, Tuesday, 3 p.m., Alaska Daylight Time. Dr. Evelyn Talbot sat trembling on a cold cement floor, blinking into pure darkness. No matter how hard she strained her eyes, she couldn't see so much as a glimmer of light, had no idea of the dimensions of the room where she'd been tossed or who'd thrown her in it before locking and bolting the door. Considering all the psychopaths she'd studied over the years, she was afraid to find out who it was. She had to calm down, she told herself. If she didn't, she wouldn't have the presence of mind or the physical strength to save her own life. Not only did she have to manage her fear, she had to remember everything she'd learned as a forensic psychiatrist who'd spent the past 20 years studying serial killers. In this moment, her education was the only weapon she had. She removed the suit jacket she was wearing over a matching beige dress and rubbed the arm she'd landed on to see if it might be broken. Whoever had grabbed her as she was getting out of the car at her own house had attacked without warning. He'd come up from behind, thrown a bag over her head, hauled her off her feet, and shoved her into the back of a van. Before she could even reach up to try to remove the bag, she'd felt a knee in her spine as her hands were jerked behind her and tied. Then the door had slammed shut, and she'd heard an engine rev and tires squeal as she was launched to one side with the motion of the vehicle. She didn't believe her arm was broken, just bruised or sprained. Fortunately, the rope that had been used to tie her up had been cut off as she was dumped into this room, so she had feeling again in her hands. Until this moment, she hadn't realized that her ankle was tender too. She must have rolled it in the brief scuffle. At least whoever kidnapped her hadn't been particularly rough when he forced her onto her stomach, so nothing had happened that would have injured the child she carried. Yet. But who'd abducted her? She hadn't caught a glimpse of her attacker, but she assumed she knew him. Her mind sifted through the dangerous men she'd studied since graduating from college, but she couldn't even venture a guess. It was frightening not knowing what she was up against. It was even more frightening to acknowledge that no one would have any clue where she was, or even that she'd been taken, least of all Sergeant Benjamin Murphy, or Amarok, as the locals called him. Hilltop's only police presence and the man she loved. It was summer in Alaska, that brief period where the days lengthened to almost 20 hours, and tourists came from all over the world to enjoy the natural beauty of the last frontier. She and Amarok, his nickname came from the Inuktitut word for wolf and went all the way back to junior high, had finally relaxed and begun to believe that the danger Evelyn had faced for so long, until Jasper Moore had been caught and imprisoned 7 months ago, was over. They'd been so sure of it, they'd begun planning their wedding. She was supposed to meet Amarok at the Moosehead today, possibly right now. She'd lost track of time, to talk about the food they'd serve. On the 8th of July, they were going to be married in a small ceremony in Alaska, where he'd been born and raised. Then, after the birth of their baby, they were going to fly to Boston, where she'd grown up, for a second reception in the fall. Struggling to even out her breathing and slow the pounding of her heart, she hugged her knees tighter to her chest, as much as her swollen stomach would allow. If the person who'd kidnapped her was one of the psychopaths she'd worked with, she had some inkling what to expect. He was probably someone who was easily threatened, someone who lived to dominate others, someone who had to win no matter what the cost, someone who enjoyed torture and or killing. She could go on simply by ticking off the traits named on the PCLR, which was what Dr. Robert Hare had created to help diagnose a psychopath. She knew what such people had in common: glib charm, impulsivity.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?